This episode of the Commerce Marketer Podcast is brought to you by the Bronto Marketing Platform, a flexible yet powerful software that helps you grow revenue, save time, and optimize marketing resources. If you're interested in making sophisticated email marketing easy, visit Bronto.com. That's Bronto.com. For brands today, having a social media presence is essential, and with over 1 billion monthly users, Instagram is one of the premier social platforms. But many companies, both large and small, struggle with growing their followers and are frustrated and overwhelmed with the time and resources it takes to effectively generate ROI. Welcome inside the Commerce Marketer Podcast studio. I'm your host and owner of 158 Instagram followers, Greg Zakowicz. Today, we're going to talk all about Instagram marketing, including ways to grow your followers, attract the right followers, and how to effectively use it for brand marketing. Join me for the conversation today. I welcome to the show Vivian Conway and Tasha Mays, the co-founders of Instagram, an agency that helps individuals and companies leverage their Instagram accounts. Viv and Tosh, welcome to the show. Thank you both very much for being here.
Thanks for the intro. Yeah, we're very excited to be here.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for having us.
Yes, and for reference, I'm Tash.
And I'm Viv.
Yeah, and you guys, next time you say something, you may just want to reintroduce your name just so they can put that voice to the name just one more time as well, for myself included here. So Viv, Tosh, before we get into it today, why don't you just briefly tell the audience a little bit about who Instagram is and the types of work you guys do with both individuals and companies?
Yeah, sure. So Instagram is a Instagram marketing company, and we've been running for about 3+ years now. We primarily do a lot of training. So we've got like online courses, but we do in-person courses about teaching businesses or marketers how to use Instagram to leverage their marketing strategy. And we've also done, I think my favorite thing about what we do is the range of clients that we have. So whether it's, developing an Instagram strategy for an events company is a completely different strategy than we would for an e-commerce brand or a personal brand. So it's a lot of varied work, whether it's, say, developing an influencer marketing campaign for someone or running a big giveaway for them or actually running an account. There's quite a variety of sort of marketing strategies that come along with the platform Instagram. So, yeah.
And I think the reasons we came to be where we are for slightly different reasons, but have, sort of what we bring to the table is quite different, but are really beneficial. So to give you a bit of background, I myself started a sportswear business when I was still at university and sort of used Instagram as my main marketing channel. So it was what was getting me the most traffic to my website and in turn sales. And then Tash had a bit of a different stance, and she was coming in from, say, the influencer point of view, was building up a bit of a portfolio in terms of around food. So that initially it was just to go out into industry and get a job because we both studied food science, which is a different story. And so with that kind of knowledge and that experience, we started managing accounts for other people. And so then, a few months later, so became Ace the Gram. And so now, like Tash mentioned, we work with, business owners and marketers and anyone that thinks that Instagram would be a great platform for them to boost brand awareness, sales, and so on.
So I appreciate the background. Thank you very much for that. Couple questions that have nothing to do with Instagram here. Everyone's going to notice, and they're probably going to jump online and go to Instagram.com, but they're going to notice your accent. I know. Can you guys tell the audience where you are based?
Sure. We're both from New Zealand, so the other side of the world, and it's currently 9 a.m. in New Zealand. We're just going into summer at the moment. So yes, we're both Kiwis.
And you guys do work with retailers and clients all around the globe, correct?
Yes, yeah. So much of what we do is digital. So a lot of our consulting clients are overseas and we Skype them, and a lot of our clients are from all over the world.
In fact, the best thing about being from New Zealand, it actually kind of plays to our advantage because even though we've only got 4 million people or something in our entire country, Facebook and Instagram often use us as like the guinea pigs for any new features that they have. So often we'll be
cool.
Because it's like an easy sample size, and the culture doesn't differ too much between, either end of the country. We're actually used as a guinea pig for some of the newer features. So for us, it plays to our advantage, and then we can kind of spread that out across the world.
Yeah, that's very cool. And I've known multiple people who go to New Zealand, and everyone who absolutely loves it when they go. Is there anything negative about New Zealand?
It's hard to think of things negative, and I think we are one of those rare countries where most of the world likes us. Like, I think I've taken that for granted. I lived in the States for a bit, and people would be like, oh, you're a Kiwi, and they just think about their great trip that they took to New Zealand, or that they watched Lord of the Rings one time. But we are very lucky that we have a good reputation. Maybe the only thing is it is a small country, so there are obviously less people for a business to reach, say. So if you want to, scale to a certain size, you do have to look past your own borders.
But that's the beauty of the internet, right? Like, it doesn't really matter where you are. Everyone's kind of at your fingertips, which is awesome. People just might not understand us so well.
Yeah.
But the accent, people seem to love the accent, though. So even if they don't understand you, you get a pass there. They're like, oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
We're going to get to the food portion of the episode later, so I don't want to break in that too much. But you mentioned that you've studied food science. So what is both of you, either your favorite food or the healthiest food someone should eat?
Oh my gosh, I love this question. I've never been asked this before.
Really?
I really hate decisions, so this is a really hard question for me. You go first, Tash.
So was the first thing favorite food?
Yeah, you could do either one, or you can give me both, but either favorite food or healthiest food.
I would say favorite food would probably be different to healthiest food. So I'm like super boring and I'm a chocoholic. So everyone's like, what's your favorite food? And I'm like, super generically, chocolate. And then I'd say the healthiest thing you can eat is dark leafy greens or broccoli or fresh vegetables straight from the earth, I would say. What about you, Viv?
Well, like I say, I really hate decisions. But at the moment, I'm really enjoying pizza. I love pizza. I couldn't believe that Tash went to New York and didn't eat pizza.
I reckon pizza's fascinating, though, because I think it can actually be a really healthy food. But pizza's such a, like one pizza could be so polar opposite to another type of pizza. Like New York deep dish pizza, totally different to sourdough, thin crust, like full of veggies pizza.
Yeah. And then I think in terms of healthy, it's just anything in moderation, really. It's all comes together to make you a healthy person.
Okay, very good. And yeah, pizza is one of those things that you can go, at least in the States, you can go to different cities, 8 different cities in the same state and get 8 different types of pizza. And it's all kind of called the same thing. So what do you take on your pizza?
Oh, on your pizza?
Viv is super boring.
Yeah, I just like margarita pizza or just cheese, or we've got a place that just does veggie, but it's just capsicum and mushroom.
Okay.
Very plain and simple.
Yeah, Viv likes super bland food. You know how kids start with a super bland palate and then expand their horizons? Viv never expanded her horizons. She's still doesn't like heaps of flavour or sauce or anything. She's super plain food.
I like fish, but I wish I liked seafood because we're surrounded by the ocean here.
Yeah.
You can go diving, spearfishing. I don't really like it. So
Whereas I like a packed pizza. Everything and anything on it. Even like pineapple. I know pineapple is very controversial for pizzas. I'm all about it. So just everything in the fridge is on my pizza.
I think pineapple's good on pizza myself, so you're in good company here.
Oh, good.
Now, it's funny. I have 2 smaller kids, 5 and 7 years old, and one will pretty much eat anything or try anything. So stingray, you name it, he'll eat it. And the other one is as bland as a kid can get. So we keep trying to give him stuff, and he just gives this look, and he's like, yeah, that's not going to be good. I'm like, oh, I've lost already. If you find a way to break your palate there and expand a little bit more, let me know how you did that, because I'm struggling with that with him right now.
But that is actually something that we learned in food science. It's probably because that child has a really sensitive taste buds.
Well, some people are super tasters, so they actually have more taste buds on per surface area of their tongue than others.
Yeah, and those people obviously can't have super strong flavors because it just tastes overwhelming to them. So that's why Viv hates blue cheese and kids hate blue cheese. So as adults get older, their taste buds die off more and more, and then they start liking those foods. So if you're a super taster and you're an adult that doesn't like those type of foods, it's probably because you're a super taster.
Oh man, I had no idea that was a thing. So I'm gonna start noticing things that he likes. I try to keep a list of things he likes and then try to slightly bridge off of those things to introduce him to something else. But that's really interesting you say that. So I'm gonna start noticing this a little bit more and see if maybe that is an issue with him. Awesome. So okay, this podcast is done. I've gotten everything I need. So thank you. All right, so we're about 10 minutes in and we haven't even touched Instagram yet. So I'm gonna try to corral us back on course here. Let's start from a very high level. Your job is to help companies do better with their Instagram accounts. So why do you think so many companies do actually struggle with using Instagram the right way?
That's a good question.
I think what people need to start with is their intention, right? So they've got to sit down and figure out why is it that we're using Instagram. do they want to drive traffic or brand awareness, and what does their brand look like in pictures? Because Instagram is such a visual platform, we need to make sure that we're putting our best foot forward, because in a lot of cases, your digital footprint might be the first interaction they have with your brand. So we need to make sure that we understand our brand and that we can display that with imagery and through our tone of voice on the platform.
So let's take a retailer, for example. And let's say, okay, we're going to be on Instagram because that's where our audience is, right? And maybe they don't know what they should be using it for, right? They don't know whether it should be for traffic or for sales or for lifestyle branding, whatever it might be. If they're unsure of what they do or what they want to use it for, is there an easy way for them to decide, or is there kind of a default they say, okay, if you don't know what you want to use it for, maybe you should just use it for brand reinforcing? What would you say to that?
I think it would be sort of deep diving into their marketing strategy at the moment and thinking, throughout this year of marketing, what are our campaigns and what are we wanting to get out of them? What are our KPIs? And then how can we have these marketing platforms that we have access to? How can they be a good driver to get to the goal of our campaign? So if you're, say, Coke, then obviously it's not like people are going to go to the link in your bio and then purchase their 6-pack of Coke. Like, that's not really a relevant goal for you. It would be more like, okay, so this is our campaign and we want to do massive brand awareness in these countries, and then you can track it more like that. Whereas if you are a local salon or a retailer, how you were saying, and you're like, okay, so I want to have my hairdressing salon booked out by this date, then you can start to measure that exact success metric and then start to push those messages for that outcome on Instagram and frame it in that way. So I think it's working backwards. It's sort of thinking, what do I want to get out of this? Like, why am I even spending time and energy and resource on this platform? And then from there, all the growth strategies and the strategies that fit will come from that. So things like, an influencer marketing strategy, that will be really different depending on what your intention is, whether it's for brand awareness or direct sales, or the structure of that campaign will look really different.
You touched on the strategic there. Viv, a couple minutes ago, touched on the content issue, right? It might be the first digital touch point that the customer has with your particular brand. What is the balance that a retailer should look at between strategic view and quality content? And I say quality content, like, do you have to have professional photographers taking pictures? Or if your strategy is pretty solid, can you get away with, with Greg over here snapping something on his iPhone and throwing it up on Instagram? What is the balance that a company needs to take between quality content versus their strategic plan?
So I think it comes back to when you come up with your strategy and what you're kind of going to try and achieve, then we have to think about, okay, well, what's the value that we can provide? So obviously, if you were like, I'm going to make a meme Instagram account and I'm going to post heaps of funny things, your quality of content doesn't necessarily have to be that high, but the value is still there. So we've seen, you look at any public figure, they can kind of just post whatever they want because the value is just in them. People just want to keep up with them. If you look at a business, on the other hand, though, in terms of marketing, if that business is based on, say you had a high-end furniture store or, your e-commerce product, you want to present it really well because you want people to buy it, then yes, in that case, I would say you need to think really hard about, well, what does our brand look and feel like? And hey, if Greg can just take a few snaps of this phone, because iPhones, have great cameras and they look good, then by all means do that. But sometimes we get to a situation where actually it is worth investing in professional content because, like I mentioned earlier, if this is going to be the first touch point that someone has with your business, or maybe they see your product in a store and they want to have a little stalk and figure out what your brand is about, and have a look at you online, then you need to make sure you're putting your best foot forward. So it's really within your best interest to make sure that value is there. And if that value means providing good looking content, then that's something you need to consider.
Yeah, I think to add to that as well, we've seen the difference in Instagram over the last few years change from being a more entertainment platform to literally a tool that people will find product and services through. So for example, people aren't leaving as much of a trace anymore of liking and following that they've been there, but they're finding services or products on Instagram. So for example, we were running a workshop the other day and we were in a different city and we were like, where should we eat? So I found 5 eateries around the area that we were looking. And then I went to Instagram and checked out all of them. And one of them had beautiful food photography of, well, it wasn't even a beautiful food photography, but it showcased their food in a really appetizing, great way, and they just had great content and their Instagram looked really great and it was better than the other eateries. So then we went there because of their Instagram and because of that content, and then we left and I was like, they have no idea that I found them on Instagram. Like, I didn't like them, I didn't follow them, but they got our business because of their Instagram. And I think we're seeing that a lot through different businesses. People are checking out your Instagram to either verify their decision for purchase or to find you in the first place. So putting your best foot forward is so important.
So it's interesting you say it's shifted a little more to a discovery platform. I really love the real life example you just gave there. So I certainly appreciate that. I guess that begs the question on my side then, when you talk about an Instagram strategy, even for say a small mom and pop brand that just wants to get on Instagram, is it possible to be successful on Instagram by just posting pictures of say products, or no matter what you sell or the type of service you offer, do you have to have some sort of lifestyle story within your Instagram feed?
I think that's a great question. And I think it's just being aware of how people use the platform and what, I guess, language the Instagram community speaks. So if you say go onto an Instagram account and it's sort of lots of images that look like flyers, then especially a millennial audience and people that are native to Instagram, the platform, if they find you, they'll be like, oh, they're missing the mark of how you should interact on this platform. So we find the best images and the best content that performs are ones that are really contextual. So ones that aren't just the photo of the bear, but the photo of the bear at the beach, at a barbecue, showing it really in context. So I think you don't have to, be super personal brand and talk about exactly why your business started and all the things. But I think Instagram's such a powerful way to show that brand story. And also it is a global platform. So these days your business isn't compared to Harry and Sam down the street's business. It's compared to every business on the internet. So the more that we can differentiate ourselves by portraying that core story and those key point of differences that make us, that's when you'll get chosen, because that's when people decide that they resonate with you and that's why they'll pick you over someone else.
If we kind of take a step back and say, oh, these are the type of posts we should do from a high level, and we say, what are some of those high level strategies that companies should at least look at and consider to grow their followers? You mentioned influencers a minute ago, which we'll talk about today a little bit. I know you guys are big on giveaways and things like that. What are some of those tentpole types of strategies that companies can look at to say, okay, if we do that, this is something we can do to integrate into our Instagram strategy? What would you say a couple of those are? Influencers, giveaways, I mentioned two of them. Are there others we should be looking at as well?
Yeah, I think there's a number of things on Instagram that kind of work to produce a good end result. So if we're making, and one of the biggest things there is actually just making use of all the features that Instagram gives us. So yes, we can implement things like giveaways and using influencers, but let's also have a think about what we're doing in terms of hashtags. Are we using location tags? Are we using stories? And within those stories, are we using, again, stickers and polls and engaging with our audience to get direct feedback? So it's about what is Instagram offering us and how can we utilize all of those things, smush them together, and then, result in a great outcome.
Okay, I love the stories and hashtags because I want to touch on both of those things. So we'll start digging into these a little bit, but here is the kind of the $1 million question. And this is something which is probably going to be a little subjective, but you guys are experts, so you might be able to lead people one way or the other. It's what makes a good Instagram post? Is it the quality of the image? Is it lifestyle image? Is it something inspirational, like an inspirational message? What is a good post? And then how do companies decide what is best for them, whether they should be doing something?
I think there's a few components to that. One of them is your post giving value? Because at the end of the day, people only care about what they can get out of something. They don't really care about, your messages if they're not giving value to them. So whenever you post, you should think, if I was following this account and I saw this post come up on my feed, why would I like it? What value is it giving me?
That's great advice.
Yeah, so always thinking, what value am I giving my followers and my audience so that they will see me as that value provider and then go further down that funnel, right? So value is a key thing that ties in with attraction. So you've got to attract your target audience with that image, and whether that's the aesthetic or the humor or whatever that value proposition is that attracts them, that's the first component. And then the second component is that it's getting across your key messages. So often we see, we're so spoiled for metrics these days. that like a marketing company, for example, might do a big campaign with the company and say, okay, we're going to measure this based on, the engagement that we get from this. And if you're Nike and you send some viral video around of like a little cute kid falling over, then that doesn't actually increase the key messages that you're wanting from that campaign. Even though that might have, 1 million hits, that doesn't actually benefit your company in any way. So I think people are losing sight of that. That's really important too these days. So it's not only attract them by some type of value, but also what key messages are you getting through in that post. So whether that's, showing your product in a great context of something new that people might think that's a great way to use your product or service, or whether that's, getting across in your caption some really informative information around why, the science behind your product is a certain way. I think that's what makes a good post, that mixture of those two components.
And would you say that same answer would carry over for Instagram stories as well?
Yeah, although I think Instagram stories are a different ball game, because I think we always say that your Instagram feed is your finished portfolio, it's the front of house, it's your curated, beautiful messaging about all of those key things that you want to get across. And your stories are the behind the scenes. So that's the way that you actually connect to your target audience these days. And that's the way that people are expecting you to sort of decrease that distance between you and them and really connect with the behind the scenes, whether that's, like factory tours or the owner speaking, or showing in store around a retail of like the new in or staff style, or just those really on the ground things that could be your friend just doing from their stories. So I think stories are a lot more raw, and the stories that are performing the best are actually more raw. Like you don't have to create a really produced, beautiful video for Instagram. It'll actually perform worse than if you have a candid video of your day at work. So I think that's a really important thing to be aware of with stories. And also stories are more interactive, and they are opening up that conversation with your audience to then reply. So using things like polls or questions, or encouraging that audience to then respond back because you've opened up that conversation.
I love the way you frame the two contexts there, right? So the stories is for this and the post is for this. I love the way you frame how to think about those things. Based on what you just said at the very end of that answer, am I to assume that the stories will gain more reach, or at least generate more engagement with the audience? Or am I presuming something I shouldn't be presuming?
No, that is true. And that they algorithmically as well, the more interaction you can get on stories, the more people that your stories get shown to, and then the more you move up and up that into that golden spot of as soon as someone logs onto their Instagram, you're that little circle at the top of their screen. So we do want to encourage interaction, but also it's a lot more real than, say, commenting on a post, because it is a more raw content format, if you know what I mean. So it is encouraging interaction, and we are seeing that, as user behavior decreases with the amounts of posts that people are liking or accounts that they're following, we're seeing increases in engagement with stories. So how many people are replying to stories, and then the conversations that can generate, and then all the features that Instagram are maximizing because they've noticed this trend. So you can start a conversation from one of the stickers that people can add to their stories. So they're realizing that this is sort of the 2019 way that people are prioritizing in their user behavior, and then they're maximizing with giving us more tools to increase that.
Oh, very cool. And would you say that, what about the practice of saving your stories into, I think the highlights, I think they're called. I am certainly not an Instagram expert by any stretch of the imagination, as evidenced by my 158 followers. Saving stories to highlights, if that's the right terminology there. Should companies do it? Should they only do it for, like, say, those extra secret behind the sneak things? Or is it always good practice to either do it or never do it?
Absolutely. I think there's so many different ways that businesses can utilize story highlights. One of the favorite ways that we see businesses using them is things like FAQs. So you might like to put up a few stories and ask for FAQs, and you can always, ask them yourself from a different account. And so you've got a curated nice collection of FAQs and answered questions that you can save to your highlights. The other one is things like menus, price lists, opening times, things that people, like Tash mentioned in terms of the cafe example. Well, if you had a restaurant or something similar, then people want to know as soon as they get to your account information like this. So highlights are a really easy way to display this information. But on top of that, then are there things that people like to see all the time where there's some really high performing stories that lots of people reply to and so on? So what are the things that you think people would like to see over and over again? Have to think about those sort of things, but absolutely so important, and would definitely recommend utilizing them from a business standpoint.
Yeah, I like to think of them like the tabs on your website. So, the key things that you want to tell people information about. Your Instagram page is basically like a visual short summary of those things. So you can have different highlights for those key points about your business, if you like.
So you mentioned hashtags a minute ago.
I did.
I'm going to rope you back in here. Obviously, hashtag is one of those ways you can start to generate followers, right? Hashtagging the right things here.
Yeah.
Now, I've seen posts with 3 hashtags. I've seen posts with, 20 hashtags. How many hashtags do posts typically need? Is it to blast things out there just to get followers? Because I would presume we're talking about getting the right followers. If you're just hashtagging something to hashtag it, you're not really collecting the right followers at that point. What is an appropriate hashtag strategy?
Really good questions there, because it all kind of links in together. So I suppose the first thing we need to think about is a little bit like I mentioned earlier in terms of Instagram's giving us the opportunity to use this growth tactic. So we should by all means, take advantage of it at all costs. So for everything that you post on Instagram, you're allowed to use up to 30 hashtags per post. It's like Instagram's way of saying, hey, put your content out in all of these different places because we want to give other users the chance to find yours if it provides value. So it's a win-win situation. There's been a lot of sort of clickbaity stuff in the last couple of years around shadow banning and so on. There's nothing to be concerned about, and I'll get to that in a second. So I think with hashtags, we've got to think about the fact that the aim of the game, if you like, is sort of to make the top posts. So if you go into your search tool for Instagram and you search any hashtag, you'll see that there's a collection of top posts, and then right next to that, there's a collection of recent posts. So our aim of the game is kind of to make those top posts. And with that being said, we've got to consider a few different things. So like I mentioned, the shadow banning time, around that time, what Instagram did is they bought in and utilized Facebook's image recognition software called Lumos. So what Instagram now does is you post a photo, you use some hashtags, and it can actually tell what's in the photo. And the reason that they do that is because they don't want to use it on Instagram to search hashtag dog and get a feed that isn't of dogs. So they want to provide value to their users, keep them on the platform for longer, and so on. So when we're choosing what hashtags to use, the first thing that we need to think about is, okay, well, what's in my photo? Am I outdoors? Is there animals in the photo? What kind of food is in the photo? If you're taking a picture of coffee, then by all means, hashtag coffee. A couple of years ago, the strategy would have been really different. We would have said, okay, in order to make the top posts, it's like purely engagement based. So if you had 1 million followers, you'd be able to use any hashtag you like, guarantee that you'd get 10,000 likes on a post and kind of outdo everyone in terms of engagement and always make the top posts. So that image recognition software has combated that a bit, which is actually awesome because for us with smaller accounts, it gives us the opportunity to still, become in those top posts because it's now not just based on engagement. So if we think about the first thing is pick what's in your photo. The second thing would be, okay, well, what is relevant to my niche? So again, if I'm taking a picture of that cup of coffee, I might want to go, if you search hashtag coffee, along the top of the screen, you'll see related tags. So that's Instagram's way of saying, if you're interested in coffee, you might be interested in XYZ. So you might have hashtag cafe, hashtag, latte, hashtag coffee addict, etc., etc. So you might want to include a few of those because that's your way of saying to the Instagram algorithm, hey, I posted this photo, but I'm really this is the niche that I'm in. So it's going to say, okay, cool, that's relevant. We'll put you in the top hashtags for that too. And then the third thing you need to think about is, okay, well, what might people be actually searching for to find the content that I've posted or to find my product or service? So again, if you are the cafe, then you've posted a picture of coffee, you've used relevant hashtags to the photo, you've used hashtags that are relevant to your niche. But okay, are you targeting people in a certain location? Are you targeting people that will be searching for certain things. Will they be searching for coffee spots New Zealand? So think about what people might actually be searching for to find your product and service. And you might find that some of those hashtags are really small, so they don't have a lot of posts, but it's worth you using them anyway, just in case people are searching for what you're offering. So 3 different things when we think about hashtags. Number 1, above everything, remember that we can use 30 per post. And then the 3 things that we covered were sort of think about what's in your photo, think about what's relevant to your niche, so using those related tags at the top of the screen. And then lastly, thinking about, okay, well, what might people be searching for? And then the next thing about hashtags is we want to post them in the first comment.
So that was my next question. So I'm interested in hearing this.
Yeah. So, and it's a little bit, people to have different opinions on this because, like you said, you'll see 10 different Instagram posts and they've all used hashtags in different ways. But what we would suggest is when you post it in the first comment, it doesn't take away from what you're saying in the caption. So often we'll see people, post a really good caption, but then you kind of click see more and it's just filled up with hashtags, which kind of detracts from what you're trying to say. So posting in the first comment doesn't really have any impact on whether or not you make those top posts, because how that's measured is if you post a photo and you copy and paste your hashtags straight away into that comment, Instagram's going to say, okay, great, she's posted hashtags, he or she's posted hashtags, and now I'll start tracking the engagement, so the likes and comments on that photo in compilation with a few different other things. I'll then decide whether or not I'm going to put that in the top posts. So you might miss out on 1 or 2 likes, but overall, it's not going to have a massive effect.
Very interesting. You mentioned a minute ago, okay, the hashtag can be used for search. And I want to go back to the example that you provided at the beginning of this conversation today about finding a local restaurant. Can you think back to your journey that particular day? Did you use Google Maps or something to look for local eateries and then go on Instagram? Or did you start your search on Instagram? And then if so, what was your hashtag search?
I do both. So if I'm looking for, often I will start on Google and just search, Auckland cafes. And then from those ones, I'll look up from that list, I'll look them up on Instagram. Or you can look in location. So instead of just the hashtags, you could look at the location of Auckland and then see who's posted cafes and then go into them and have a look. Or you can search Auckland cafe, the hashtag, and see what comes up. And that's just, you just put it in the search bar and then you click tags and then you look at all the tags. And often in the top posts, someone would have, it's normally someone who does get quite good engagement and things. So you can go stalk that cafe and normally that's quite a good option. So yeah, there are a variety of ways to look it up on Instagram, whether you want to start with Google or go straight into Instagram.
Awesome. So that's good to know. I don't want to ask you the next question because I used to do email consulting and I still get the question now, how often should I be sending marketing emails? And it's one of those things where the answer is always, well, it depends, right? So I'm not going to ask you how much or how often people should be posting on Instagram, but is there a danger in either posting too often on Instagram or not posting enough on Instagram?
Yeah. I like the way that you framed that question because you would have the same situation as us.
Your eyes would have been rolling over there. I know
because you're right, it does depend. But also I think it depends again on that intention. So for example, I have an art account and I post on it maybe, twice a year, just when I've done a new piece of art. And it's basically just a finished portfolio. And that always performs really highly because it's super niched and it just, I only have to post twice a year. Whereas that's such a different intention for that account than my account that I do a lot of collaborations with companies on. So for Tastefully Tasked, which is my account where I post like food and lifestyle and do collaborations with, I have to show up on stories every day because that's the consistency that my followers expect from me and that's how they stay invested. And then I post because part of my value to those followers is the aesthetic of the posts. I can only realistically come up with, say, 5 really amazing posts per week. So I'll try and post about 5 times. That has changed a little bit. It used to be that before stories were a big thing, you would we would expect people to post every day to stay super high in the algorithm. But now we're saying focus on stories, and then when you have a good quality post that really gets across those messages, then do that high quality post. But the priority should definitely be stories because they're far easier because you don't have to curate them or think about them. It's more on the fly. And also that's how people are interacting with the platform.
So it sounds like consistency is more the key than anything.
Yeah.
One more question before I kind of move away from the posting side, but let's say consistency is key. And I traditionally post, we'll say 4 times a week. This week, I can only post 2 because I don't want to force it because I don't have enough to post this week. Is it better just to throw something out there, recycling something to keep the consistency, or are you better off that week just posting 2 and not force something?
I would say probably better to just post what you have. So just post 2 instead of 4. But if that, backup post of just putting it up there is pretty good, like it's not detrimental to your strategy, then that's fine too. It's just if we see, like the only mistake we see is when people are like, oh, got to post on Instagram, and they get their, one of their staff members is wanting to just take a quick snap and it's like, pixelated and is detrimental to the image of their brand, and they post that just to have a post up. That's when we say don't post.
Very good. You mentioned giveaways and influencers before. I kind of mentioned those as well for you. But there are common techniques to grow your following, sell products, things like that. You mentioned the way Instagram works, and it's kind of shifted more so to a discovery tool than pure entertainment. Is it realistic that brands can grow without using influencers and without using things like giveaways today? Is that possible?
Oh, absolutely. I think one of the most underrated growth tactics is that we all already have an audience, right? So if you're starting a new business or a new Instagram account, then, put your handle everywhere that people are already having contact with you, in your email addresses, in your email signatures, send it out with products, encourage people to post about your product for you, especially customers that have already bought from you and can kind of be that ambassador. And it's like word of mouth marketing online, right? It's the same kind of thing. So absolutely, you don't necessarily have to invest in influencers or giveaways. You can just make the most of the audience that you already have.
Very good. And let's talk about giveaways for a second. So something that I think it's increasingly becoming more common, or at least I'm seeing it more and more. Is there a secret to the giveaways? I mean, traditional type of promos and things like that, they always say keep the gift or keep the prize something very specific. So if you're a jewelry retailer, you should give away jewelry, not an iPad, because everyone wants the iPad, right? Everyone wants a car. Not everyone wants the jewelry. Does the same strategy or the same principle apply when you're doing giveaways on Instagram as well? Keep the product similar to the company?
Yes. So we have a bit of a formula for a successful giveaway. And I like what you're saying about, you don't give away an iPhone or an iPad because everyone wants that. But instead of giving away your product, we're finding that some of the best giveaways are just knowing your target audience intimately and giving something away that only they would be interested in. So, for example, there's a girl from New Zealand who has grown a lot of big Instagram pages for her different businesses, and one of her businesses was a clothing boutique, and she thought, okay, so my target audience is this 15 to 25-year-old girl who's interested in this, and this. So for her big launch giveaway, she didn't just give away clothes because they didn't know the brand yet. So she gave away, like Justin Bieber tickets, and she gave away like Kylie lip kits and heaps of fake eyelashes and all these different things. And so that ties into number 1 of our little formula. So our little formula is called the ACE method, the ACE method. The first thing is attract. So, whatever is really attractive to that target audience that you're wanting to get, that's what you should post. And when we say attract, we just mean, make the prize look as juicy and as exciting as possible. So instead of posting, 3 boxes of Kylie lip kits, you open up the boxes and you spread it out and you make it look, as larger than life as you can, because people are cutthroat these days and they won't enter anything unless it looks wildly exciting. And then the C for the Instagram method is collaborate. So if you're just a small business and you don't have that much of a following, but you've put this time and, this money investment into this prize, then obviously you want to get the most bang for your buck, right? So we say collaborate with just one other or two maximum, so that it's not too much, but just one other company or person. So for example, you can imagine if you were this girl launching this clothing boutique and she didn't have any followers and she put all this money into this prize and then only like 50 people entered, that's not very a good return for her. So instead she can collaborate. So she paid this influencer to post this influencer who had exactly that target audience, she paid her to post the giveaway at the same time as her, and then suddenly she's getting all that traffic from the influencer and her following skyrocketed. So C is the second thing. And then the final thing that you need to remember is the E, which is ease of entry. So as I was saying, people are super cutthroat and won't lift a finger these days to do anything for entering competitions because they're everywhere. So you have to make it super, super simple. So that means, don't get someone to take a photo with a billboard and then post it to their feed and tell 5 friends about it. You have to just say, tag a friend in the comments and follow this other account and us. Like, you should only have a super set, crystal clear, one call to action that they need to do, and then your giveaway will go off. A little hack for giveaways is to say 1 tag per entry, enter as many times as you like, because then that means that your comments can suddenly blow up. So instead of, say, Viv tagging Tash, Harry, Sam, Ben, Rata in one post, then that's split into 5 posts, and that's when you start getting thousands and thousands of comments.
That's a great piece of advice. So I presume it's a lot easier on the company to monitor that as well, right? So if you're not making someone do 8 different things for the entry, it's easier for them to track on their side, which I would presume would be much better for them from a time and resource standpoint as well.
Yeah, definitely.
We didn't really touch on influencers. I'm not going to go into influencers too much today, but we keep seeing reports that come out that people are growing tired of influencers and they're not as effective for driving product sales as they once were. And I'm not sure, you could kind of find a report on anything. I'm not sure how accurate that is. I'm not sure it's not accurate, but I'm not sure how accurate it is. It could be sour grapes. It could be someone who's doing a report who just hates influencers, right? So it's kind of skewed there. You guys are in the weeds a little bit more than a lot of people. So if you had to sit back and say, okay, we have this curve of influencers from early phase to kind of right in the middle, it's at its peak, and then on the downward trajectory, where do you think we sit in this phase of influencers right now? Are we still in the early phase? Are we in the middle? Or are we on the downside of it?
It's really interesting that you say that, because at all our workshops we say, okay, and at all our workshops we are in a room with business owners and marketers, and we say, hey, let's talk about influencers and what have your experiences been? And it's a real mixed bag. And so we see the same thing happening in the media, where people talk about these amazing success stories, but we also see a lot of negative press as well, which I think when it comes back to where we are at the industry, the reason we have such varied responses is because it is such a wild west, if you like. And if we were going to give one piece of advice in terms of, because influencer marketing still works, absolutely, but a lot of people are still having negative experiences. And the reason for that is it sort of comes down to, I said one thing, but probably 2 things. And the first thing would be, do your research. So you could have the person with the biggest followers, but if they don't have followers that are interested in your product, or it's not aligned, then it's not going to mean anything. Whereas, that same influencer might convert so highly for someone that was a good fit. And I think the second thing is communication. So making sure both the brand and the influencer are on the same page. We've seen a lot of communication breakdowns where, like one party has expected something more and another one, the other one was on a different page. There might have been money exchanged or not. And it's a really unregulated industry. So it's sort of up to you to make sure you're doing the research. So what is the engagement? What are the analytics? Are you going to interact with multiple influencers to build those touch points and not just, hope to use one influencer and that be the silver bullet for your entire business? But then also, communicating. So planning your briefs. Okay, what do we want to get out of this campaign? Why are we doing this campaign? What do we want to achieve? And what does that look like from our end? And what do we need from the other party? So those are probably the 2 main things, because it definitely works. And in fact, we're at a point of change now where, and this is like, I still feel like I'm telling a secret when I say this, but with the increase in stories and the engagement that people are getting on stories, influencers are still charging more for posts, but in reality, you can still get massive return from stories, and often it might not even cost you anything. Like, you might just be able to send free product and they'll post about it and that'll be great on their stories. And we've had lots of business owners get massive return just from stories with no ad spend, if you like, or capital influencer spend at all, just from product exchanges. So we're actually at a kind of changing point at the moment, and I think we'll see influencers probably charge a bit more for stories in the next year or so. But at the moment, we're still in this kind of golden spot, I think, and opportunity.
That's really interesting that you say that, and the example you gave there as well on the story side. So I appreciate the depth of there. I got an email this morning from a vendor that was like, "Hey, Greg, the FTC just passed down more rules for influencer marketing, and they tried to clarify a few things, right?" So I gave it a brief scan, but it was like, "Hey, just putting, hey, this is a paid sponsorship is no longer good enough based on what it is. You have to put it closer to like the offer, the tag, or whatever." But stories, I think, makes that gray, right? It convolutes that a little bit more because what's the story going to do? Is the person in the story going to start saying, "Oh, I was paid XYZ for this," and I think you're not the only person that said we're kind of in the Wild West right now. So I had the CEO for Viral Nation, which is a influencer marketing agency up in Toronto, on, and Joe kind of said the same thing to me. He was like, "Yeah, it's kind of the Wild West right now. We're still piecing it together, So
Yeah, well, I think as well, it's really interesting because influencer marketing at its core is the oldest trick in the book, right?
Sure.
Every company under the sun every sporting company, has had ambassadors and things, and it's completely not new. It's just that, now as a skincare company can suddenly have their own version of ambassadors, but because it's new for all these, these new industries that suddenly have this opportunity to have ambassadors, they have no idea about that research phase. So I think it's just educating both sides of the parties, because we obviously work so much with the influencers and with the brands, and there is a communication issue because what the expectations are from each side. And what we're finding is interesting is that suddenly everyone's business, what they know about business, goes out the window when it comes to using an influencer. They don't use contracts if they're just new at it. They don't use all these things that are common practice. So we're finding, influence marketing works really, really effectively if you choose the right ambassador for your company, and then you're both crystal clear and it's a really fair deal for both parties.
And I think that's a really interesting point that Tash brings up in terms of it's the oldest trick in the book, and like everything's kind of, it sometimes goes out the window, because I think what we see a lot is now that the barriers are so low to start a business, a lot of people don't set aside any money for marketing, which, blows my mind. We're so lucky with Instagram and Facebook that we can literally get in front of people for free. But you look at what business looked like 10, 15, 20 years ago, where it was, how else would you get in front of your audience? You might have had to go door knocking and so on, but you would have had to put ad spend into flyers or billboards or in the paper. And so all of a sudden, when we're thinking about paying, it seems like, some people are really averse to the idea, but it's really like, well, you can have the greatest product, but if no one knows about it, what's the point? Like you've got to allocate some kind of budget to get in front of people.
Just my personal take, I think the two things that you both just mentioned, they play with one another. They compound and make this. And you're right, we always have influencers, right? It used to be Michael Jackson or the famous singer, the famous actor who was your spokesman for it, which was really just a famous influencer. I think the thing now is that, and I was probably guilty of this when it first started happening, was you have these influencers that, like, it might be a 16-year-old kid on YouTube or something that is the influencer, and most people sit back and go, "Well, who the heck is this kid?" Right? So you lose that credibility, that trust a little bit, but that kid knows what the heck he's doing, right? And
Yeah.
he's doing the same thing that the famous person was doing before. And Viv, to your point, I think that feeds into, hey, we don't put any money aside because we just see 16-year-old kids being able to sell a bunch of product for us. Why do we need to put money aside for this? We'll just have, some kid, or we'll just have some young person who no one knows do this for us. And I almost feel like those two things kind of play with one another there, and they feed on the unknowingness of people.
Yeah.
Or how they traditionally did things.
I agree, because I think there is this funny thing with influencers that it's different to celebrity influencers. For celebrities, everyone is very aware that they live different lives and they're on a different trajectory to their normal person. Whereas influencers that are actually getting so much traction these days, we relate to them because they're like us. They're showing us into every aspect of their lives. They feel like they're similar to us. And then when we see them with all these opportunities and earning all this money and working with all these brands, there is a difference because you directly compare them to you. So there is suddenly all this public backlash and things because it's a different mindset about it. And then you're right, with all these companies being like, oh yeah, he's only 16, blah, blah, blah. But he does have that true influence, but it's just that different way of thinking about it. There's a huge shift. So it's, your average person is now an influencer, whereas that was never really the case before. They would be put in a totally different little circle.
Absolutely. I have 2 more questions before we get to some fun things for you. And I think both of these questions will have some really practical takeaways for the audience today as well. So first one being, I'm sure a lot of the companies you work with, or a good number of the companies you've worked with, at least in the past, everyone I talk to, there's always time and budget constraints for creating content, right? Everyone has so many hours in a day, and they often don't have time to do everything they need to be tasked to do with. So when you work with clients that maybe do have time or budget constraints, what are some methods and or tools that you might advise clients to use or work with to get around some of those content production challenges?
One of the best ways that you can save time for social is scheduling. So obviously with Facebook, you know that you can schedule on the platform. So you can make a post go out tomorrow when you write it today. For Instagram, you can't do that directly on the platform, but there are partners that have been approved. And one of these isn't actually an approved platform, but it's our favorite. It's called Sked, S-K-E-D. And you can basically do anything that you would normally do on the platform, like even schedule that first comment with all your hashtags. You can schedule stories, you can schedule posts, you can schedule your entire 2 weeks or month Instagram posts to go out. So Sked is a great way if you are, especially, a business owner or marketer, and you've got all these things on your plate and you know that you need to do social, but you don't want it to take up an hour every day. Just schedule. Just choose Monday and be like, okay, I'm checking with my content calendar and I'm pushing out all of my posts for this month. So we really recommend scheduling for those that are time poor. And if you're more financially poor but not time poor, then one of the best things that you can do to get traction on Instagram is actually engaging. So become a lover, not a lurker. And when you're on your Instagram and you're scrolling down your feed, instead of just scrolling past, like and engage with everything, reply to stories, get yourself out there, because you've got to give love to get love. Like, people aren't going to come over and follow you and start interacting with you if you've never done that to them. Like, the only way they're going to find you is if they discover you. And one of the best ways to be discovered is to get in front of them via giving them love. So just, when you're at appointments, when you're sitting in the car, not when you're driving, just all of these different times that you do have downtime, just make your time on social productive, because so many people just scroll mindlessly. Just make that time productive instead.
Very nice. And I lied because I said 2 more questions. I have now 2 more questions. And this, I'll probably phrase this one to both of you. But if you guys were starting a business today, not Instagram, but starting a company today, and you were starting your Instagram account, what are the first 3 things you would do this week to begin growing your following count? And you don't need a lot of description. You can just literally just list those off. What are the first 3 things that you would do to grow your follower count?
I'll go first. I would invest in content. So I would pay for a shoot and get a bank of content so I didn't have to stress out about what I was going to post every day. And then I would figure out my content pillars. So the key messages that I have and what's going to attract people. I would figure out 3, content pillars that might be product in use, aspirational photos that are going to attract my audience, and then maybe customer testimonials, for example. And then I would schedule. What about you, Viv?
I like the content idea, and then I would probably start creating a list, and with the intention of launching an influencer campaign with 30 to 50 influencers within the first couple of weeks of launching the account.
Very good. 30 to 50 influencers. I'm assuming you're probably talking about micro influencers, but correct me if I'm wrong there. What type of budget would someone normally look at for, say, if they wanted to do that 30 to 50 influencer type range? We'll say you're a small retailer, right? So you're not going after Kardashians or anything.
Yeah, totally. So I think, there's a lot of ways that you can do it, and everyone has budget restraints. And if I was the small retailer, I'd think about, okay, well, what's the value of my product? Because if the value of your product is a lot, then you can get away often with not actually paying for that if someone actually wants the product. So, for example, we've been doing a campaign recently with a local restaurant and just offering $40 vouchers to influencers in exchange for, stories and a TripAdvisor review. So for them, some of them were going out for dinner anyway, and we've just picked people that were really local. So in that situation, we're not paying for any, but often people with even like 20 or 30,000 followers that are local are like, yeah, sure, I'll come along for a $40 voucher. I was going to go out for dinner anyway. So it's still valuable for them. It hasn't really cost the restaurant very much, but we still see those results. So I think with that number, I would just think about how can I build up the maximum amount of touch points. So I wouldn't be choosing someone from the UK and someone from the States and then 5 people from Australia. I would be thinking about, okay, well, where's my target audience? Okay, I want to really niche down and get lots of crossovers so the people in my target audience at the beginning think, oh my gosh, this product is everywhere.
You guys are killing it with examples today, so I so appreciate that. I'm sure the audience is going to get so much more out of it, so great job. Final question before I move on to some more fun things for you. All right, so a retailer goes on or a company goes on and they say, okay, we've got our strategy, we did our 3 things, and they actually put their full-fledged effort into their Instagram strategy. Is there a way other than just looking at follower counts to tell if the strategy they have chosen is not the right one?
Yeah, well, I think it's like anything. Like if people have done a Facebook ad before, we all know that you try one ad and then you try another ad, and then whatever one of those ads that's performing, you double down on that and put more ad spend behind it. I would, start with a couple of strategies, and then whatever one is really working for you, then double down on that. So even if that is your influencer strategy, but you just double down more on a certain aspect of it that's working. So you use, 10 influencers and then one is suddenly amazing. You're like, oh, well, why don't we actually get you on board as a long-term ambassador and have you all year and create this really strong relationship with you. So it's just tweaking as you start to see what is performing, and ways to do that is, if you're using paid influencers, then or even not even paid influencers, you can do things like give them a discount code so you can track it. Business analytics on Instagram are getting more and more sophisticated. They're crazy. You can sort things like all of your content from the last year ranked with the highest engagement or ranked with the highest website clicks or ranked with the highest saves. Like, go and have a look at your business insights for your Instagram and just have a play, and you'll probably find out so much data about your account that you weren't aware of.
Very cool. Did I neglect to ask you guys anything you feel is critical for the listeners to know today?
I think we've probably bombarded your listeners with enough.
Yeah.
I think that's been awesome. I think even if you just focus on one thing that we've mentioned today, implement it and let us know how you get on.
Awesome. It's the accent. They're all listening, I promise. You guys have both been very generous with your time. You guys have a couple more minutes to stick around for some non-business questions?
Totally.
Awesome. This one will go to both of you. What's the one piece of advice you would give to your younger self? And you're both young compared to me, but what's the one piece of advice you give to your younger self?
Oh, that's a good question. I think I'm still a people pleaser, but I think that having your own business is like a personal growth course every single day. So I think you have to start to back yourself and become more and more assertive. So I think if I could go back, instead of make everyone like you, just be more assertive about your own journey, I think I would just do something like that.
Yeah, I think I was thinking in my head, the first thing that came to mind was like, don't be afraid to quit your job. But I think that's kind of like coming out of high school, I sort of felt like going into uni, and it might be different in the States because we're quite small. It felt like there were kind of 5 different career options that you would be quote unquote successful, if you like. But I think, you just build your own version of success, and you're just in complete control of your reactions and where you go.
Very nice. Build your own version of success. I think that's a nice quote right there. So feel free to grab that.
Yeah.
Are you guys inbox zero type of people?
I am, but I think that I respond to
what was the question, sorry?
Are you an inbox zero type of person?
Oh, I like to, if I will keep messages unread if I haven't actioned them yet. So like, for example, your podcast, because we hadn't done it yet, it was still unread because then I'd know how to find it.
Yeah, but Viv and I are really different in that Viv's super detailed focused. So if we're working on something, she'll, dive deep in it'll take longer, but it will be really thorough. And I'm definitely a big picture person. So I might just inbox zero, but with a few casualties. Whereas Viv probably wouldn't have an inbox zero, but she would be really thorough.
Yeah, like if someone hadn't followed me up, or if I needed to follow them up again, I might mark them as unread to make sure I'd follow them up. Yeah.
Very good. Do you guys say niche or niche?
Niche.
You guys said it at the same time. I think I heard one of each.
No, we both say niche.
Okay.
I think niche is a UK or American thing because literally everyone I know in New Zealand says niche.
Okay, very good. It's about split in the States, I would say. All right. How about wind chill and heat index? So I'm assuming you guys use wind chill and heat index over there. So temperature is 50, feels like 65. Do you guys subscribe to that theory, or is whatever it feels like the temperature?
What?
I feel like that's American terminology. What's heat index or wind chill?
It's like a different temperature number. So they'll say, oh, it's cold outside today. It's 35, but it feels like 26.
Definitely how it feels. So, like, not what they say,
Yep.
but what it feels like. I'll take it by my senses.
Perfect. So if they say it feels like 27, temperature to you is 27, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Very good. You guys are based in Auckland, correct?
We're actually based in Mount Maunganui, which is on the coast 2 hours down from Auckland.
Okay, I'm not going to try to say that. But what is your favorite restaurant in the area?
Google it, because I think we got #1 beach in the world.
Yeah, we live in a very beautiful beach town. Favorite eatery? Oh, so great question. Viv and I are really into our cafe life. We don't actually go out for dinner that much though, eh?
No, but we did go out recently for dinner to a restaurant called Alpino, which is an Italian restaurant. I had a fantastic caprese pizza. Is that how you say it?
Yeah, and I had a made from scratch pasta, authentic Italian pasta. So I would say Alpino.
Oh, very good. And what was the name of the town again?
Mount Maunganui.
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 Okay, I'll Google it. Check it out. How do you guys drink? Do you guys drink coffee? And if so, how do you take it?
I only drink coffee in emergencies like today, and I just have a long black.
Yeah, and I have Viv is quite sensitive to things like caffeine, so she gets a bit hectic on it. I did not used to be a coffee drinker, and I've conformed to the coffee lifestyle, and now I'm obsessed. And every morning I have
What do you have today?
I always have an almond mocha.
And then Viv, do you drink tea?
Yeah,
or do you just not drink any?
I'm more of a tea drinker. Normally I'll get a green tea or maybe an Earl Grey if need a bit of a caffeine hit.
If you're feeling 80.
Very good. I'm a long black guy myself.
Yeah.
From a coffee side.
Yeah.
Is hot dog a sandwich? You guys eat hot dogs there, right?
Yeah.
Do you guys classify it as a sandwich?
No, it's a hot dog.
Yeah.
And why is it not a sandwich?
I think because a sandwich would have more in it.
Cut it the wrong way.
Yeah, and it would be lettuce and stuff. And
Okay.
Yeah.
Is brunch a big thing over there?
Yes. Yeah. Big.
Yeah. Do you guys, is brunch overrated?
No, brunch is my favourite meal of the day.
Yeah. Sometimes it feels criminal to pay $20 for some eggs on toast. But it's delicious. Yeah, big thing over here.
Very good. Do you guys have any questions for me today?
Do you think a hot dog is a sandwich?
So I go back and forth, but I think I've settled on no.
Yeah.
And here's my reasoning for it. If I say, hey guys, come over to my house this weekend, or I'm going to have lunch, and you say, what are you serving? And I said, I'm going to have sandwiches. And you guys show up and I got a table full of hot dogs. If someone did that to me, I'd be looking at them like, I thought you said we're going to have sandwiches, not hot dogs. Right. And that's how I look at it. So I think technically, yeah, it is, but no, I don't classify it as one.
Fair enough.
And my question would be, what's the best part about living in the States?
This might take me a while.
Whereabouts in the States do you live?
I'm in North Carolina, so the Raleigh-Durham area. So it's on the eastern coast, about 3 hours from the beach and about 2.5 hours from the mountains in North Carolina. So it's nice, statewide, centrally located, but it's nice. It's a warm climate. We get 4 seasons, but it's definitely hot and humid in the summertime. Definitely warmer, but it's a nice area here. States... that's a really good question.
We've actually got friends that live here, and they're from the Outer Banks, which is in North Carolina, and they think the worst thing about living in New Zealand is that we don't have good enough cookies or ice cream. So maybe that would be the best thing about being there.
I would think you guys would have really good gelato there, though.
Yeah, we have good gelato. We have really,
They said the bits aren't big enough in our ice cream.
Okay. So Outer Banks, I vacation out there every year. So we're a couple hours away from there. So you're familiar generally with the area. I would say as far as the States go, it's big. So there's so much traveling you can do here. It's just such a big country and there's so many cool things. So, every place has beautiful things there. But I've been to a lot of states. I've been to 48 states here and I haven't seen half the things I want to see. So I'd probably say those 2 things.
Are you going to go to the last 2 states?
I'd like to get to one of them. So the 2 are Alaska and North Dakota. I would love to take an Alaskan cruise, so I will probably get out there at some point. I don't know what's going to take me to North Dakota. I think there's a military base out there, but beyond that, Black Hills maybe. But I'm not sure I'm going to get to North Dakota.
That's really interesting, your perspective of, because I lived in LA for a while, and I would say the best thing about living in the States was the convenience, because obviously, everything's so cheap and fast because it's so big. And then the opportunity, I think opportunity is unparalleled in the States because of how big it is and who you could run into on the street. So I'd say I think a lot of Americans grow up with just, if they have a business, they can scale it to the States, and you've suddenly got, you're set for life. I think that's something that's underrated because that's just your reality.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Everything's always perspective.
Totally.
It's always perspective. I was out in Australia for a week last year, and I look at it. I loved my time there. But if I sit back and look at it, I'm like, well, it's a big city. It's nice, but it's a city, right?
Yeah.
You still get angry people, you get happy people, you get restaurants and things like that. So if you sit back and you move out there 3 years later, are you still having that same perspective on it? It just might be everyday life too. So I think the perspective, you're too far in the forest to see the tree sometimes.
Yeah, so true.
So good questions. Anything else for me?
No, it's so fascinating though. That's literally my favorite thing about podcasting though, is the people that you get to actually have a good conversation with, and it's often quite different to your own life.
I agree with you. So you guys have the Instagram podcast. You guys still doing that?
Yes, we're launching season 2 soon.
Okay.
All in the works. It's really exciting.
Great. And do you guys have a launch date scheduled yet, or TBD?
TBD.
All right. So Instagram podcast, everyone definitely check that one out as well. So guys, we're going to have contact info in the episode description for how to reach you guys. But how about verbally? If someone wants to reach out to you guys, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you guys?
I would say come along to our Instagram page, which ironically we've only just started posting on. We've only just started our Instagram podcast. It's called Instagram Podcast on Instagram, and that's where Viv and I are hanging out a lot of the time.
Very nice. Tosh Mays, Viv Conway, everyone, co-founders at Instagram. Thanks, ladies, so much for your time. You guys killed it today. So thank you so much for taking the time to spend with me. To those listening, especially our listener of the week, Mary from Atlanta, any New Zealand listeners want to reach out to me, let me know. You can be the listener of the week as well. And anyone listening, if they want to tell their marketing story, I'd love to hear from you as well. So I hope you enjoyed the episode. Until next time, have a great day and be kind to one another.